Hello, this is Steve Wiseman at the Peterson Institute for International Economics with Gary Hufbauer, also of the Institute. On Monday, January 23rd, President Trump announced a bunch of initiatives on trade, fulfilling his promise to have an America First trade policy. Gary, what did he announce?
Well, he announced several things. One, he's put out an executive order calling for renegotiation of NAFTA. Now, that's not necessary because the president can, of course, call up his counterparts in Mexico and Canada, and they would be happy to meet. In fact, they've set up a meeting with both Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mexican President Peña Nieto. But he has an executive order renegotiating NAFTA. Second, he has an executive order withdrawing the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. Again, this is more symbol than anything new because the TPP was never submitted to Congress, so it was not going anyplace anyway, but is a stronger symbol. And third, he's told some CEOs of companies that if they move jobs abroad, he's going to put a 35% tax on their imports into the United States. That he's repeated a statement he's made before to certain individual companies, and now he said it to a group of CEOs. So we have quite a bit of symbolism, which reinforces his campaign promises.
Can he selectively impose 35% tariffs on individual companies?
I don't think so. I think if he does that, he will run into court problems pretty quickly, that is naming a company. But he could name the products that the company imports on a very finely designated level and put a tariff on those. But actually naming a company sounds like a breach of the 14th Amendment, which requires equal protection of the laws.
Gary, what could he do? What do you think he'll do on NAFTA out of the box on renegotiating it?
Well, here's the big thing, and I really want to emphasize this symbolism point. I think NAFTA will be, the name will go, and for many of his supporters, that will be quite a triumph. We'll get rid of the NAFTA name and replace the substance of NAFTA with bilateral agreements, one with Canada and secondly with Mexico. So the symbolism there is enormous. Now, in terms of Canadian relations, we don't have many disagreements with Canada. We have some on softwood lumber, and maybe there are a few other smaller things that we have disagreements with. That should be a fairly smooth negotiation. With Mexico, that's where the hard stuff is. And I think Trump, and these are just guesses, he will have a list of areas where he wants Mexico to open its markets in ways that they are not already open. And Mexico is very largely open already. So a few things like the so-called de minimis level for low-value shipments into Mexico with no customs form or a very simple customs form, no tariff, is only $50. Coming into the U.S., it's $800. So get them to raise their de minimis level so more Mexicans could purchase from eBay or from a store, from Amazon in the U.S. Well, that would be something. But I think probably the big thing is that he will want to raise this so-called rule of origin, especially on autos.
How would that work?
Well, we're getting pretty much into the weeds here. But the present rule of origin is a 65% of any auto or part has to be made within North America to be eligible for zero tariffs. So increase that 65%, let's say, to 75% or 80%. That'll make it inconvenient for some companies. I think in particular Toyota would find that inconvenient. But other auto companies might like it, and some parts companies would probably love it. And since the autos have been so central to his Twitter campaign, this kind of fits in naturally with what he's been talking about.
Would the Mexicans go along with that?
Probably not willingly. but they might go along as,
Wouldn't they get asked for something in return?
well, this would be something they'd be giving in return. Would they,
Oh.
what would they ask in return?
Yeah.
I don't know what the Mexican demands are of the U.S. I think the main Mexican complaint about the U.S., which Trump might be able to answer, is that the infrastructure on the southern border crossings, that would be El Paso, Juarez, and Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, and San Diego, Tijuana, and others, quite congested. So they would like to see more infrastructure so it's easier to, you don't have such long lines of trucks and so forth. And maybe that fits in with infrastructure. I don't know what else the Mexicans particularly want of the United States.
Gary, it doesn't sound as like these are radical departures from the status quo.
Well, it depends on how large the U.S. wish list is of Mexico. Remember, the Mexican trade surplus with the United States is running about $60 billion a year. That's not a big number for the U.S., though politically maybe it's a big number. For Mexico, it is a big number. And the Trump campaign rhetoric would suggest we want to reduce that number a lot, maybe cut it in half, maybe cut it by 2/3. And that would mean a lot more Mexican imports from the United States, or a lot fewer Mexican exports to the United States. So that would be a big lift, a big hit on the Mexican economy.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.